Greetings. Today I'm here to answer some more questions, the remaining questions that were asked of me during the 30 days of Halloween. These are just questions, they're not Halloween specific. The questions I'm answering for you today have to do with the subjects, generally the subjects of tinctures, tonics, and general kitchen witchery. Where the other day I had some general witchery questions. These are specific kitchen witchery. And the first question is a follow-up to the video that I did on the two magical vinegars. I made 4 Thieves vinegar and fire cider, both vinegar based, both in my case apple cider vinegar based, and they have been brewing since the beginning of October. They could have been decanted the end of October, but I let them go a little longer. But they're really ready to go now. So I thought while I was answering the question, I could decant that for you. This one is the this is the 4 Thieves vinegar, and this one has the one that has other than the apple cider vinegar, it has rosemary, sage, thyme, cinnamon, clove, peppercorns, juniper berries. And this is something I'm going to first take something. I just want to quickly do it. There's no magic to this, but I'm just going to take it and pour it. First of all, I have just a fine mesh strainer, and I'm going to pour it through first one time and catch the garlic and those kind of things in that, and the juniper berries and the cinnamon stick, etc. And then after that drains, I'm going to put it again, take it again through this is a coffee filter. It's a reusable coffee filter. We don't use it for coffee. We used to, but I don't think we ever use this for coffee. And it doesn't smell like coffee at all. You can purchase these, but you could use a paper coffee filter. You could use cheesecloth or a fine flour sack towel, those kind of things. But you just, to get, if there's any small particles left in the that need to be strained, like I can see floating little bits of herbs and stuff. Now they don't have to be taken out, but for some people, it's just an aesthetic. Okay, now the reason that we have 4 Thieves vinegar at all is this is something, remember, if you want to go back and look on the video, you can hear the story, but this is something that has gone back through, centuries. This was purportedly used during the plagues, during the 14th century plagues in Europe. But I don't think they consumed them. I don't think they drank them. I think they just maybe used them as face coverings or whatever. So this is a real good thing. If you want to use the modern equivalent of what I would think this is, I can't really give you a dosage, but I can give you a use. If I were going to take this internally, when would I take it? Well, I think I mentioned before that when we used to fly anyway, before we would get on an airplane, my husband and I would take airborne. It's a little thing that dissolves, a little tablet, effervescent tablet that dissolves in water, and you drink that. And it just boosts your immune system. It boosts. It's very high doses of vitamin C, whatever. And I swear by it, because on a plane, that's a really bad place. You can catch all kinds of colds, and especially in the winter months when you fly. Not that we're flying anytime soon. But that is a preventative. And if I were to take this as a preventative, if I were going to want to take this internally, it would be because I want to prevent it. This is nothing that's going to cure anything that I might be suffering from. Okay, I'm just holding it up in the air because I want to take and pour now through the small mesh to make sure I get all the little particles out of it before I put it in the bottle. Okay, anyway, it's a preventative. But this is vinegar based and is to be used just like a vinegar, any kind of a vinegar. You know, if people drink apple cider vinegar all the time or other vinegars, and remember we do eat vinegars in salads or we use them in marinades and things like that. You can use this as that well too, that way too, but this is not going to be as tasty because we've added a lot of really kind of weird things to it. Not necessarily, but we've added, you know, like clove and juniper. Well, I'm going to let you know because I'm going to taste it and see what it tastes like. But it also can be used as a wash to wash your hands. Like if you want to make sure that you're not spreading germs, or washing your sink out, spraying it. And in that case, I would put it in a spray bottle and use it just to spray around, like in the bathroom or in the kitchen, in the sink, to keep germs away. It's really, you know, it's really good for that kind of a thing. But also, it's also good magically. Because of the things that are in it, it has a lot of properties, so it can cleanse magically as well as cleansing for your health. Okay. Now this is just an old apple cider vinegar bottle. That's what I have here, and I'm just going to pour this that I'm draining. Once it comes through here, into the bottle. Again, it smells really strong. I can't wait to see what it tastes like. Now, people are asking about a dosage. Again, I don't like to give a dose. But because this is a vinegar, it's not going to hurt you. It's really not going to hurt you. You're not going to overdose on this. There's no alcohol in this of any kind. So I guess I could say, as far as the dose goes, you can take what you need. Okay, so I would probably start out with, you know, I might take a spoonful, like a tablespoon, or I might take a shot, or part of a shot, or maybe even a shot. I'll let you know when it tastes like. I think that's going to determine a great deal about how much you might want to take from it, because if it's a horrible taste, you're not going to want to take too much. Okay, now I'm pouring that down into my bottle. And again, this is just, I just save my bottles from vinegar. I save bottles from everything, but I really like these bottles because they're glass. Whatever you use, you want to use glass. You don't want to try to use plastic. I don't like to judge you, but I will judge you if you use plastic. Okay. I'm going to put the rest through. Okay. Woo. Let that go through. And then, oh wait. It smells very, very strong. Oh wait. We must be patient. Like anything, when you're using natural ingredients like herbs or making vinegars or doing anything like that, you need to see what works for you. Even when we're talking about something that does have alcohol in it, like let's think about it like a tincture. If you are somebody who drinks alcohol regularly, it's not going to affect you much by taking a shot of something that contains alcohol. But other people are very sensitive to alcohol. They don't drink much of it. So just a teaspoon maybe is going to be absolutely plenty. We don't want anybody to get drunk because of a tincture that they're taking. So, but the same with the vinegars. I think it's better to, if you're going to take something, to take it over a period of time. Like if you're going to take something like this that you want to boost your immune system, you might want to, and let's say you're planning on, let's say that the world came back to normal and you're planning on taking a trip. Okay, I think the day before I was traveling, I would probably take several doses of it, you know, maybe the day before, and then maybe some the morning of the trip, before I got on the plane, or something like that. But again, that's just personal preference. see. Now, like everything, we have to be sure that this gets labeled. As soon as I get off here, I gotta make labels. You might be able to see behind me. It's very dark and I apologize for that. But I do have the brown bottles back there are the tincture that we strained out of the, that I used the spice from, the nasturtium and the spice from that I gave to my Heather. I gave her a full bottle for her, as part of her birthday present. To ward off, you know, to treat any sinus infection she might get this winter. She's prone to them. And that, of course, that's different because that is a tincture. That's a tincture. This is a vinegar. So there we go. That's how much I got. I'm going to taste this and see what it tastes like. Because that's the kind of person I am. See if I can put a little bit in a spoon. This one, the small taste. Again, this is for Thieves vinegar. Woo! Well, it's potent, but it's not bad tasting. The apple cider vinegar, I can taste the apple cider vinegar. I taste the juniper berries and the clove. Remember, juniper berries is what they use to make gin. And also, I think corned beef or spiced beef. I have a beef recipe. I think it's just a spiced beef that I make when we camp sometimes. It has juniper berries in it. It's really a good flavor. And I think that kind of tastes like that. Anyway, I got that much out of my little jar. Out of this jar, I got this much. So that's pretty good. Okay, that will get labeled. And now we're gonna talk a little bit about the fire cider. Let me wash these out first. I've washed everything and now I'm ready to decant the fire cider. Fire cider is one more step yet, one more ingredient that goes in this. I'm going to first of all get all the solids out of it, just like I did. And while that's draining, I'll talk to you a little bit about it. Just get it mixed one more time. This is a lot of settling in the bottom. See what it smells like. Oh, this smells very strong of garlic, number one. No vampires here. And this recipe from Fire Cider, I basically got from Rosemary Gladstar. From the, I think that's what I said in the video. But it's very popular. You can find it all over the internet. Even Martha Stewart has a recipe for Fire Cider. It's very popular, which tells you it's very effective. And unlike the Four Thieves vinegar, this is really not a preventive so much. This in a cleanser, this is really meant to be taken internally. This is not, even though it's based on vinegar, where the Four Thieves vinegar you can use to wash your table, wash your hands, wash your, spray it in your bathroom sink, etc. This, I would not do that. This is meant to be taken internally. And it's meant to ward off any symptoms that you get that you might be feeling. Like if you start to feel a little funny. And in the video I described how my family historically has used NyQuil for that, even though we do use NyQuil when we have full-blown cold or whatever, but when we just start to feel a little bit off, we had a habit of taking a little shot of NyQuil. It made us feel better. This is meant to be used for that reason. When you start to feel a little cold coming on, maybe a little tickle in your throat, or just start to feel a little bit achy, especially in the winter months when you're likely to get maybe a cold or the flu. Again, not COVID. This might help you feel better. It should make you feel better, maybe knock it right out of you. Okay, so this is, again, meant to be taken internally. But again, it's based on vinegar. It's not alcohol-based. So I can't really give you I can't tell you how much to take, but I personally would probably just take it by the spoonful. I'd probably take it a couple times a day by the spoonful. I don't think it's going to be tasty that I'm going to want to drink it down. But one thing we do have to do to it that we have not done to the other, that we do not do to the Four Thieves, is I'm going to add a little bit of honey. This is going to be sweetened a little bit because it has so much garlic. What does this have in it? Horseradish and onion and garlic and ginger and cayenne, and this is not going to be just delicious to drink down. So we're going to add some honey, and I need it for this amount. I need a half cup of honey. So I'm just going to squeeze my beer here till I get a half cup. I guess I could pour it, but because it's hard to squeeze. Now, I'm going to pour it. Anytime you use honey in any kind of a recipe like this, as a matter of fact, pretty much anytime you use honey, if you have a good source for some organic local honey, that's the best thing, because remember, if you have any kind of allergies or anything, your local honey has what it takes to fight the allergies, especially if you have allergies to, like, airborne allergies, like from plants and things growing around you. But I think it's always good. Your bees are your local bees are your best friends. Okay, so I have a half cup, I'm measuring, of honey in the bottom of my measuring cup. It's kind of slow because it's cold here today. Just a little bit more. There we go. This is not local honey. I got this from Azure Standard, Azure Market, but it is raw clover honey. So, that's going to do me good. And I've strained the solids out of here, so I'm just going to add a little bit of this in and get that stirred in first. And then I'm going to put it back through because I want to get it thin. But I want to stir it into the whole mixture, not just into... okay. So I'm not going to taste this until I get the honey in it. More and more over-the-counter, what we want to call over-the-counter remedies for things, are including some natural ingredients in their making of the product. And what they are doing is they still are adding a lot of chemicals to things. A lot of those chemicals are things to make it more pleasant in some way. Like they added sugars to cough medicine to have children take their medicine. I remember when we were children, my mother gave us, anytime we were feeling nauseous and she thought we should be vomiting. I don't know why she wanted us to vomit, but she apparently did. She gave us something that was called paregoric, which was the most horrific stuff. I can't even describe it. It just was horrific. And there was nothing pleasant about that. And when your mother says you're going to take a spoonful of this, you're going to take a spoonful of that. That's the way it was in our lives growing up. But, as the years went by, manufacturers started to do things like sweetening things up, putting sugar and flavors and colors and making things, more palatable. And so it ended up adding a lot of unnecessary ingredients that they maybe did not need to add. And I remember when my middle child was young, I think she was 2, she might have been 3, I think she was 2 or 3. I used to keep her vitamins up on the very top shelf of the cupboard because she was a very inquisitive child. And she got up onto that counter and climbed up in those cupboards. She stood up on the counter, climbed up in the cupboards, and got the vitamins down. I think they were something like Flintstone vitamins. And she ate the bottle of vitamins. before I caught her. She had eaten pretty much the bottle. So of course we had to call poison control. She was fine because they said if they had been vitamins with iron in them, she would have been having a problem. But since there was no iron in them, it was okay. But it wasn't okay with me. We got her name on the watch list, I think, from that. But also, it just wasn't okay with me that she could do that. I think we stopped giving vitamins at that point. You know, she was a good eater. She ate a lot of well-balanced meals, so a lot of food, so I wasn't worried about it. But, you know, they make these things so palatable that they're adding a lot of ingredients, a lot of sugars, unnecessary sugars, and dyes and colors and things to make them stable. And, you know, I don't think it's ever really a great idea. Okay, I sweetened it. I stirred in the honey. It's all incorporated through this mixture. So now I put it through the coffee filter just to make sure there's nothing else in it. And then it's going to be ready for me to bottle. Okay. So again, I'm going to taste this. Excuse me. I'm going to taste it and see what it tastes like. I don't think it's going to be wonderful. But for this one, I'm going to bottle. I'm going to put it in a Buddha bottle. Buddha bottle is what I gave my daughter her tincture, and she loved it. I have Buddha bottles here from, of course, from Buddha Beer. But I love to use these. This is what I use on my windowsill to when I want to resprout some cuttings off of herbs and things. I stick them in water in here because they look so cute lined up on the windowsill. Okay, so this is seemingly taking a long time. I'll have to cut some of this maybe. But we'll see. Now both of these, both the Four Thieves Vinegar and the Cider are shelf-stable for at least a year, probably more than a year, up to probably up to a year at least. If you want to keep them long-term, like for instance, if you have them out for the winter months, just store them on your shelf. But if you know, the winter, it turns to spring and warm weather comes and there's not so many germs around that we have to worry about for colds and things, and you still have a lot left, I would just put it in the refrigerator and keep it in the refrigerator because it'll stay in the refrigerator at least till the next season, the next winter season easily. Okay, but you see, it's not expensive ingredients, so you don't have to be particularly frugal with it. I would not try to can it. No, I would not try to can it or anything like that. It's not something I don't think you would want to can. Okay. As this is dripping, I'm going to put this in. Just to get it so it drips. Here we go. Okay, I'm going on to the next question while that's dripping. Okay, the second question, and they're not going to take so much time. The second question had to do with using alcohol in tinctures, and this was in response to the actual video that I did on. I showed that I was probably had made the tinctures out of the nasturtium leaf. But people, this is just general, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute. But right now, this question was just concerning itself with, is there something that we can use, some kind of alcohol that we can use that is, the question was, the wording I believe was grain-free. And I was confused about why somebody would say grain-free, because what is the grain unless you're worried about gluten? So I'm assuming that you're talking about gluten. You're either talking about gluten or you're talking about carbs. And I don't know why else you would be talking about grains. Just the word grains. But I think you mean gluten. And gluten is a serious problem for a lot of people. And some people with celiac disease, for instance, cannot tolerate gluten of any kind. Now the good news is all alcohol that is distilled is gluten-free. or pretty much all. I want to say pretty much all. There's a few exceptions that I know of. But because the distillation process destroys the gluten. That's just, so it can't be, an alcohol cannot be distilled and maintain its gluten, if that makes sense. And I saw this on a lot of sites, and I wanted to double check, so I even looked on sites, celiac sites, dealing with information for people suffering from celiac disease. So any kind of an alcohol, vodka, which I used, bourbon, whiskey, Scotch, brandy, gin, they're all gluten-free. Okay, even though the grains are made from contain gluten. Now, I want to be really clear on that. So in most cases, they are safe for people, even people, those with celiac disease. There are a few exceptions. One is something like ouzo, which is a Greek alcohol, which after the distillation process, they add grain then again to it. That would be an exception you would not be wanting to try. And of course, there's also the possibility that some people are just sensitive to certain grains. Super, super sensitive to, like, barley or whatever. Or super, super sensitive to, wheat. Or if that's the case, then you would maybe want to try a different kind of alcohol. But again, the gluten is not there. You're not going to have that kind of a problem. There's some other sensitivity there. For some of you may choose that you don't want to use alcohol because, for whatever reasons, maybe you don't partake of alcohol or whatever. I do know someone who makes her own tinctures and things, who uses very little alcohol. She doesn't drink alcohol, so she doesn't really want to have a lot of alcohol in her tinctures. She will use wine. She uses wine because she does make her own wine. And so she will use her own fruit wine in its place. To make then it would not technically be a tincture, it would be an extract. But it does the same thing. But the most effective, and I have to say the very most effective tinctures that you can make, that you're going to get the best results from, contain alcohol. Because the alcohol is what pulls all the nutrients out of the herb in the first place. That the way it sits in the herb and sits in there, that solution, for weeks and weeks, that process actually draws everything out of the herb. And by the time that you're finished, your herbs are pretty worthless. You would never use those again for any other thing. Okay, so, and we're talking about when you use them medicinally, you're talking about taking such a small amount. Being alcohol, you're not going to take a shot of it, or you're not going to take drink a cup of it. Like you might take a vinegar, one of these vinegars, you might take a good stiff dose of it. But this being alcohol, you're probably not going to do that. Even somebody like me, as much as I talk, I mean, I could, but unless I'm going to bed, I'm probably not going to take a whole shot of a tincture. I'm going to take it by the spoonful. Excuse me, it's stronger. It's not necessary to overdo it. Okay? So, I hope that answers that. I'm slowed down here in my coffee filter as I'm trying to pour because all the sediment that was in it is laying in the bottom of the coffee filter, so I'm stirring to get it to come back out. Phew, oh, that smell. And I'm going to taste this. I'm going to put a spoon under here and collect some. Here we go. Once I have that honey in there, it's really not bad tasting. It kind of tastes kind of good. In a weird kind of way. Ooh, but it's very strong on the garlic. Shoo me. No vampires be coming. No vampires need apply. Okay. All right, the next question has to do with about the pumpkin pasties, and people were asking about, is it okay to add savory things to those pumpkin pasties, like meat or like onion? Oh, well, yes, yes, yes. You came to the right person to ask that question. But with a caveat, I would not use pureed pumpkin. I would not use mashed pumpkin. I would use minced pumpkin, short, small chopped pumpkin. But oh my, I can, if I had $1 for every one of those kind of a pasty that I have made in my life, during the SCA, that's really a big thing. And some of you might even be familiar with Cornish Pasties, which are basically just vegetable pasty. And then later they're originally just vegetables, and then they added meat to it, that combination. Well, that whole idea stemmed from medieval pasties, medieval hand pies, that traditionally always contained some kind of, with the meat and with the veg, like the onion or whatever, a root vegetable of some kind. They contain very often a dried fruit of some kind. They would not have contained pumpkin because there were no pumpkins. That's a New World food. But the whole idea of putting that sweet vegetable, because pumpkin is just on its own, like a sweet potato, a little bit sweet, a little sweet tasting. Even before you add sugar to it, it has a little sweetness. So yes, and being a squash, absolutely would have been very tasty. I think I have made a harvest stew with both. I've made it with both. In place of potatoes, I have used pumpkin, and I've used sweet potatoes. I've used both of those, which is with a combination of pork, which is really good. So I would just experiment. If the filling's good, it's going to be good in the pasty. I have a very full bottle of my fire cider, and what I have here is I just bought an assortment of corks on Amazon. Oops. Which makes it very easy to recycle bottles, and because you just get one that fits your bottle, and there you go, and it's all ready for use. And this will just sit on my counter. Actually, it won't sit on my counter. It'll sit on my cupboard after I get the label on it, and it's ready for anybody who has any kind of issues as we go along. I had a question about from the video that I made on witches, potions, charms, and brews. Someone couldn't understand me. I guess I muttered, talked too fast. I apologize. When I was talking about the flowers and things that I had dried to use for vinegars or tinctures or whatever my uses for, I showed lavender flowers, and then I showed a jar of really beautiful flowers that were very aromatic. Those were mostly oranges, and I think they were mostly oranges, maybe some pinks or yellows. Those were nasturtium blossoms. Nasturtium. The same thing that I made the tincture out of. And that was what the question that I had. Another question asking me about the Sinus Tincture, the tincture that I was giving my daughter to help her with her sinus infection. That was nasturtium leaves. Okay. The nasturtium is such a wonderful, magical plant. We call it a gift from the goddess around here because it just comes up all the time on its own. We don't have to do anything. I think at one time we had some, I think my friend brought me some nasturtium at one time. The seeds spread and it goes everywhere. We've had it in the sweet potato bed. When we did not have sweet potatoes, seems to grow in there. We've had it all over the back, and we have it in the front garden now that is just taking over the garden. And I thought I was going to have this video come up in the spring. I have it planned for you, but it seems we're not going to wait for spring because my husband reports that we have nasturtiums filling up a bed right now because as soon as the weather cools, that's when they grow. They can't tolerate the heat. So depending on where you live, you might get them coming up in the spring, or you might be able to grow them in some places even during the summer. But for us, as soon as it gets hot, they just die back. They die back. But what happens when they're there, they're very hardy, they're very beautiful, they come in all different colors, and they spread freely. And the most beautiful thing about them is they are completely 100% edible. Every part of them is edible. The flower is edible. The leaves are edible. The seeds are edible. And they are magical. They are helpful. They're tasty. All parts of them are tasty. All parts of them are good for different, they have different properties for healing, both for healing and for magic. So I have an entire video planned for the nasturtium, and I will be sharing that sooner than later, because I don't have to wait for spring. Like I said, I can come to you when we get a nice full bed of nasturtium. I'll film out there and I'll show you what I do with it. I do so many things with nasturtiums. Okay, so just be looking for that. All right. Somebody asked me about, I had several requests, people asking me if I was going to be doing any more cooking videos, that they enjoy the cooking videos. I have to tell you, I have avoided most of the cooking videos because I was afraid people didn't really want to see that. I already had a little bit of an issue with people that wanted to see only tarot videos, and other people didn't want to see any tarot videos. So I was trying to make those people happy, and in the meantime, I just wasn't sharing what I was doing. And I think that was foolish. I can see now why that was foolish. To me, it's very everyday. I'm always making, canning or cooking, of course, or canning, or doing some kind of baking, or doing some kind of making tinctures or vinegars or these kind of things. It's just every day for me. So I don't really think of it as being special that you might want to see it. But I have in my mind, I'm trying to make a schedule for my videos. I think this is the best way to please everybody. But I'm going to try to do some kind of a tarot related video and have it up every Monday or Tuesday. It's either relating to tarot or some kind of divination, so that the people who just want to see tarot videos will know to come back every Tuesday or whatever, and then they'll see that. And then I'm going to do one or two other ones each week I'd like to do that are more on general witchcraft themes, and maybe even some housekeeping things, both witch housekeeping and just regular housekeeping things, having to do with my garden or what I'm doing here. It seems to all relate to me. I don't really categorize, is this a witchy subject or is this a home subject, because that's just the way we live. So I just don't even think about it, but I can see that you're interested. So hopefully everybody's going to get something that they like every week from me. I hope that's going to be the case. Okay, I had a lot of interest in the pumpkin spice, and I got a very interesting question about using the pumpkin spice mixture in spells. And they were hoping they could use, could I use pumpkin spice in banishing spells? Okay, well, and this is good if you make your own mixture like I did to keep on the shelf for making pumpkin spice latte, or if you buy, specifically if you buy a can of pumpkin spice, it's going to be like the, what is it, the spice, the poultry seasoning that everybody uses at Thanksgiving time that ends up in the back of the cupboard. And every year you buy a new jar of poultry seasoning, and you end up with like 6 cans of poultry seasoning in the back of your cupboard. You don't have a lot of other uses for it. So they were wondering, and I think that's a good question, can I use that in spells? I don't think I would use it in banishing, and I will tell you why. But I will tell you, it is absolutely wonderful to use pumpkin spice, the combination, pumpkin spice, in prosperity spells, because everything about that reads prosperity. Okay? Particularly ginger, if it contains ginger. Ginger is absolutely wonderful for prosperity, and as is clove. Ginger and clove, if it contains those things, those are 2 things that are used all the time in prosperity spells. Cinnamon is basically a protection. And cinnamon would work if you're using it as a protection, like if you're going to do a banishing, and of course you would want to put up a protection, cinnamon would work for that. But To me, it's something that I use for protection or to intensify something or speed it up, make it faster, happen faster. So I don't think I would use that in a banishing, because a banishing spell is something that you really have to give a lot of thought to, and you don't want anything to happen quickly. You want it to be precisely, but not quickly. Ginger is really good, other than for abundance. It's good for as an aphrodisiac or for cleansing. Nutmeg is really good for revealing the truth or bringing justice, astral traveling, meditation, or also for money. So that'd be good in your. That's another reason for the prosperity spell. And of course, clove we talked about, but it also gives you a lot of protection and confidence. So for a prosperity spell, if you have leftover pumpkin spice, make yourself a money altar. Do some prosperity spells. You can't beat that. You really can't beat that for that. Okay? But again, for banishing, I'm not sure. Now, you might disagree, and that's fine. What works for you works for you. If it works for you, that's fine. Okay, at the very end of my questions, I had quite a few questions having to do with my cauldrons and with cooking with cast iron. And that's, again, another video that is coming. I'm going to do a whole video, at least one, on cooking with cast iron or using cast iron. So I was really going to save it and use all the information there, but I thought that's silly. I can always repeat some of the information. Because some of these, I know you have cast iron and you want to use it. So I want to answer as timely as I can. I had a specific question about, the footed cast iron, which we call the dove javans usually, or spiders that have feet. And somebody said they were told that the footprints left in the ash of that by those feet, when you want to move that, when it moves, you want to sweep those footprints out, that is an invitation for demons or whatever to fill those footprints. I don't prescribe to that. I don't say it can't happen. That to me is more of a an old wives' tale or a superstition rather than anything based on magic of any kind. I've never really seen that. Again, I have protections up in my home, and that including at my chimney where I might be cooking if I'm cooking inside, or around my stove in my kitchen area, that I'm not worried about demons coming into my kitchen because I'm very well protected. That's one of the reasons we put up protection, to avoid these kind of things from happening if they could happen. Okay, so I wouldn't worry. Put up your protection and you're probably good. I have people say, and they have purchased like cauldrons, even the little cauldrons that I show that I use all the time, that I burn incense in or I burn spell papers or whatever in, and they're just afraid to use them. I see people worried about putting sand in them, that sand might hurt their cauldron. And I also see people talking about they're afraid to use one that is old, something that's very old. I have to tell you that the ones that I have, every bit of cast iron that I have is old. At the very least, the very modern of it is something I might have received it as when I was married. But I was married 48 years ago. That's basically an antique. The cast iron that I use in my house, I keep on the wall behind me. And of those pieces, I have a very large skillet, and I have a medium skillet, I have a little small skillet, and I have a griddle, a flat griddle that I cook on all the time on the stove. Those are all old. You would have to consider them old. One of them, I'm not sure which, one of the two larger skillets was given to me by an elderly relative of my husband's, who it dated to her grandmother's house. It came from her grandmother's house. She was born in the 1890s, so I believe it was this large skillet, I'm not sure, that she had in her house, which that skillet could possibly date to 1897. I don't think it was in the 1800s that she had it. I think she had it in the early 1900s. But they only had that mark available that's on the skillet up until 1950, about 1950. So, and she At that point, the grandparents were dead. So she could have possibly had it then, but I don't think so. She never used it. She just had it. It's old. I have a Wagner ware. The griddle is Wagner ware, and it dates to, again, prior to 1959. It could be 1935 to 1959. And I also have the medium skillet up there. I'm not sure what it was, but it's so old that the marking on the bottom is almost illegible. I have purchased, when I take camping, I have the ones I take camping either in my trailer or I have back in my outdoor kitchen, some other cast iron, including my little kettles that I hang here and you cook with on the fireplace, that are old. They're old as anything. Some of them I got from sales, different kind of street sales or sales. They're still wonderful. I had a friend who sold at street fairs when we used to sell at street fairs, that he his whole business was cast iron, and what he did for a living was he would find old cast iron in houses that had been demolished or burned in the rubbles. He would dig out these old skillets and things, and then he would restore them. And he restored them basically in a fire. He restored them basically with fire and reseasoned them, and were beautiful. You can't, other than cracking a cast iron, something made of cast iron, you really can't hurt it. Like I said, you don't want to leave it out and leave water in it, or leave it out full of water, or like I never want anybody to put mine down on the ground when we're camping. Because at night, the ground gets damp, the grass will get damp, etc., and they will rust. But that was basically because I didn't want to have to reseason it every time I used it. You build up the seasoning on it, that's what it's called, the surface, so that it cooks well. But if you left it out with water in it long enough, it would rust, and it could even make pock marks in it and holes, rust through it, depending on how it was made. So that's why I say don't put water in it. You're just destroying the finish on it, But it doesn't mean that it's destroyed. If you have something that's rusty, there's ways to get that cared for. And maybe we will do a video maybe on caring for the cast iron if you're interested. If any of you actually cook with it, you might need to know that. If you're using it for magical purposes, it's not going to be hurt. You're not going to hurt those little cauldrons that you get at the witch shop, or you're just not going to hurt them. Sand is not going to hurt them. It won't scratch them. You don't have to worry about that. Dirt is not going to hurt them. Putting dirt in them, and you definitely do not use. If you have some in possession of your grandmother's cast iron and she cooked in it, you have a treasure. And the more you cook in it, it's meant to be cooked in. That's what it's for. The more you cook, the beauty about cast iron is the more you use it, the nicer it gets. The more seasoned it gets, the better it cooks. That's the whole deal. That's the whole magic of it. So if you have something like that, I would not be afraid at all to use it. I absolutely would use it. That's the best thing you can do for it, to be honest. People ask about, can I put water in it to cook with it? Yes, like if you want to cook a soup or a stew or something like that. Yes, they're just like a saucepan. You can cook in any way, that way. I also bake in mine. I bake in them. It's just like an oven. Coals underneath, coals on top. I hang it near the fire to cook with them as well, or put it on legs. It could be by the fire. I'll show you. I'll be doing some cooking. We cook on our fireplace here, and we cook outside. And I'll try to share, remember to share those things with you so you can see me cooking with them. Okay. But if you have cast iron, and it will last many years past the time you will last. I mean, I'm saying, like, my cast iron, even the cast iron that I inherited from our elderly relative who was born in the 1800s, she died like in 1980 or something. She was in her 90s when she died, and she was like around 1980, sometime around 1980, I think. So that's an old skillet. She's had it her whole life. Her grandmother had it. And, it's going to outlive me. It's going to be well beyond me. It'll still be good. My children will be fighting over it, I think. Okay. All right, I don't want to talk anymore. That's all I wanted to say. I have a list. I have a list of videos that I'm going to be coming up with. Lots of interesting subjects. So I appreciate that you're coming and watching me. And I promise you there's going to be something for everybody in the future. Thanks very much for watching. If you end up making something like these vinegars, these magical vinegars, or tinctures, which we'll talk about again, let me know. Let me know. Okay? Thanks for watching. As always, I'm Rebecca, and I wish you blessings.